So please relax and close your eyes and take in a deep breath through the nose and hold. And exhale through the mouth and hold. Again, inhale through the nose and hold. And exhale through the mouth and hold. As you go at your own pace of inhaling through the nose and holding, and exhaling through the mouth and holding. If thoughts should come into your mind, just observe them and let them go, like watching a car move past on the highway. Now is not the time for solving problems. Right now, all you need to do is inhale through the nose and hold, and exhale through the mouth and hold. And on your next inhale, say to yourself, Shema. And on the exhale, listen. Shema. Listen. In Shema, we're listening deeply, without judgment, without offering advice. In Shema, we're listening with an open heart. Shema. Listen. And when you're ready, you may open your eyes. Well, friends, it's nice to see you. See that Margie and Paul and Harry join us. Nice to see you. All right, so our opening question for today, and I alluded to this in the email, but how do you see the difference between doing nothing and being still? Or do you see a difference? And how might that apply in your own life? So I'm going to copy that question into the chat. And I see Paul has some thoughts.
Yeah. I think for me, the difference between doing nothing and being still is that oftentimes when I'm doing nothing, I'm really doing lots of other things, but not really doing anything in particular, sort of distracting myself with a lot of things. Whereas being still means I'm finding a way to be very present in the moment. So that for me, they're very, very different, very opposite things. Thank you.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. Doing nothing is just distracting yourself with little things. Never thought of that. I love that. Okay, Sue.
When I wrote that down, doing nothing versus being still, I immediately went to, when I think of being still, it's actually one of my Mussar statements, is that I say, be still, be silent, and know that God is with me. So that's interesting, because when I see do nothing, it sounds, ooh, that sounds bad to me, like do nothing, like whereas be still, it's very intentional. And as I said, it's the be still, silent is a Mussar, midah, whatever you call it. Yeah. So that I go with that. And then to me, doing nothing is just not speaking, just being, I don't know, I guess the still part seems more intentional to me.
Intentionality. Thank you, Sue. Joanne, what do you think?
Well, I agree with everything that's been said so far. I think when I'm doing nothing, I'm doing a lot of nothing. You know, I might be playing some game or trying to finish a crossword puzzle or watching television, channel surfing. That's doing nothing, nothing productive and nothing focused. And or maybe even avoidance of things. I think I spend a lot of nothing doing, avoiding things I should be doing. You know, like I just sort of make a game out of, I have to do so many dishes like now, or else I can't do any more of this nothing. But when just now, even when we were meditating, so to me, that was a very good example of stillness, you know, going in within and being still and watching my thought and my breath. And that is very intentional, and it feels, it's something, it feels good to do that, and it feels important to my sanity, I think. Thank you.
Thank you, Joanne. Yeah, interesting to bring doing nothing and avoidance together. Interesting combo. Just a quick hello to Carrie and Lillian and Esty who've joined us. I put our discussion prompt in the chat, and now we'll hear from Chaya.
Well, I think to me, it's about, is the mind aware or is the mind just poking around?
Hmm.
So am I, by being still, I'm here, I'm present. Or I mean, being silent and being still, but doing nothing is, I'm still somewhere, but I'm not aware. I'm not aware of what I'm doing or where I am, or there's no purpose per se. Being still is there's purpose and there's connection.
Yeah, connection. There's a word that we haven't heard before, but that's a great addition to kind of the purposefulness that comes with being still. All right, let's take this a little bit deeper. Now that we've kind of begun, let's look more directly at the soul trait of enthusiasm. And a couple things, you know, it's translated from a Hebrew word meaning zerazut. So we in English, we think of enthusiasm, sometimes it's sort of a rah, but enthusiasm in the Mussar sense, it's also more about alacrity, energy, diligent zeal. And probably if I were to rewrite the book, or maybe if I ever come out with a second edition, I would use alacrity instead of enthusiasm, just because it's so easy to kind of think about, well, what makes me happy, or what is it easier for me to do? And a lot of this soul trait is about, well, how do I kind of get the energy to get up and go, even if it's not something that comes naturally to me. Now, may I have a volunteer to read this second bullet, because I think from Rabbi Alexandra Shuval Wiener, because I think she brings in an interesting aspect here. And I can't see most of you, so just unmute and sing out.
There are three aspects to completing a task. The enthusiastic start, the sustaining energy, and the perseverance to move forward. And finally, moving to successful completion.
Thank you, Marjorie. Okay, I'm going to stop the share, and I'm going to put that quote in the chat once again. So what is the point that she is making here? Yes, Terry.
I think I'm going to use. I don't know how to turn do not disturb on anything. But, a big example for me would be exercising. I know I wouldn't do it. Sorry. Okay. Okay. Here's an example. I'm trying to get started here. Exercise. Want to do it, don't feel like doing it, know that if I do it, I'll feel better. So I get started, and then I have to get the motivation to go through the whole program. And then in the end, I'm really glad that I persevered and did all that and completed the process. So I hope that makes sense, because now I got to figure out how to put do not disturb on everything.
Yeah,
Thank you.
well, I think what I'm hearing is you're really resonating with this idea of 3 distinct aspects to completing a task, and they're not all equal. And for this particular task, the getting started is maybe the hardest, but it's not like that's where the effort ends. And it's not till later that it becomes easier. So Bonnie, what do you think?
I'm still back on our first discussion because I've worked really hard in prayer and meditation to be still, but doing nothing is so not part of my vocabulary. And anyone who knows me understands that. Sarah's sitting in the background laughing at me. So for me, the middle piece is the hardest.
Uh-huh.
Carrie, the way I've really handled the working out is that I pay for it, I go. I also sleep afterwards. So those are the 2 things that get me, and I work out 6 days. So for me, I have the energy. Let's do it. Let's figure this out. Let's work it out. Let's get people together. This isn't on me alone. And then it doesn't always work. And then it was, you've asked people and they've said yes, and now you're picking up the pieces to get to move ahead. And so for me, it's very hard work not to say, for me, oh, I'll take care of it. Because if I've asked someone to do it, I don't want to take away that personal feeling of I get to complete it, even though they may not be doing it the same way I'm doing it. So, and then successful completion, I am big in rewards. Anyone who knows me knows that I believe strongly in rewards. I don't care if it's cleaning out a section of your house, you reward yourself, you get the energy, you start all over again. So those are the 3 for me.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Bonnie. Sarah.
I think Carrie gave a nice, simple example. So that was good. It got my brain focused on the enthusiastic start, sustaining energy and perseverance. But I find that it really is very dependent on what task or what thing you're doing. And some things are extremely complicated and, cannot be, beginning, middle, and end. It's a very long process, especially, depending on how complex the task is. So I think of that, but then getting back to the first quote, I think that stillness to me means mindfulness, and it's very different. Being mindful, it's like, as people use the word intentional. So I agree with that. But for me, it's a practice. It's almost like a meditation practice, being still, to quiet your mind and be present. And, as opposed to just sort of, surfing on the internet or channel surfing or whatever, which is, more in the nothing category. So.
Thank you, Sarah. I wonder if I could see, and it's great that people are still percolating on that first question, and maybe we'll try to leverage that a little bit, because what if we bring together this mindfulness, stillness idea with doing a task? You know, are they, because I could say, you know, we've talked about an intentionality. I heard a number of you say an intentionality to go into stillness. You know, how does that connect to these 3 phases of task completion? Janos, did I see your hand there? Or are you just kind of moving around?
No, I've got let me put the reaction.
Okay, we'll go for Joanne and then Chaya.
Okay. Oh, so it just reminded me that sometimes I really like doing something that's very repetitive because it becomes like a mantra or, you know, some kind of task that I
Mhm.
don't have to focus as much on the task, but on the progression of it or repetition of whatever it is, and maybe even with a mantra or breathing or anything like that. That's a nice way to combine those things. And I think it helps. And in some ways, I find that much easier than something that's very complicated and has a lot of pieces to it. And it's much easier to just, okay, now I'm folding laundry, or now I used to work, I was on a kibbutz for a while, and I did some stuff in the factory, like printing rulers or something. It was like a repetitive thing. And I loved it. It really felt good. Okay.
Thank you, Joanne. Chaya.
Yeah, well, first thing I was thinking about is when you said, you know, can you be doing something and be still? It brings back to me the thoughts of Thich Nhat Hanh, may his memory be for a blessing, talking about when you do the dishes, just know that you're doing the dishes. Or even if people that if they've been practicing a walking meditation know what it's like about stepping out each time. So you're still, but there's an awareness of what you're doing. And that's what I think when you're doing something, it's with that awareness of that one thing that you're doing. It's not all these stories coming into your mind at the same time. It's allowing yourself to connect with whatever you're doing. An example for me is when I chant Torah, it's very much, I'm right there, I'm focused, I see the words, I try to, and if I can, I translate as I read and as I chant. So yeah, it's about being with that moment.
Yeah, being with that moment. Thank you. Paul.
Yeah, my little mantra that I tell myself when I'm getting frazzled and I can't figure out whether I should be anxiously doing something or anxiously being still, neither of which are very helpful, is I just say over and over for me, just chop wood, carry water, chop wood, carry water. Just be very simple about whatever it is that I'm doing and don't think about all the other things. Don't think about the complexity. And there's something about that I think is interesting, and what others have also said is that the very first thing that we read was about enthusiasm being a start, sustaining energy, and moving to successful completion. When there's a process involved, you know, in terms of walking meditation or chop wood, carry water, I mean, what's the completion, right? The completion in many ways is simply finding peace in that, you know, so it's not like there's an end point. And there are certain things where there's a, you know, that's the very definition of a project. It starts, it has a duration, it has an end, you know, that's a project. But life is more than just a series of projects. Life is something else. And I think that's, and, you know, so finding enthusiasm for a process can be a very tough thing. And I find that with exercise, to have a consistency. So Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. It's reminding me, I've gotten very busy. Hence the email that came out Thursday morning instead of Tuesday afternoon. But I've also like gotten more routine in my life than I've had in quite a while about when I get up, when I get to bed, what I do, and sort of turning these things into a routine, into a chop wood, carry water. It does take the energy about what should I do next, away from things. And it does allow, and I've tried to just get more on it. Somebody emailed me and said, I need this. I just do it. Rather than and doing it, and being mindful about doing things in that way, definitely helps. So Linda and/or Frank.
Yes, I was thinking about the relationship between doing nothing and being still, and this exercise, or kind of the process of starting a task. And it reminds me that Linda's been teaching me how to tap. And in tapping, there's two things that I've been interested in. One is tapping on focus, and also tapping on change. And in each case, we're being reminded that in some ways it's scary to change, and it's scary to focus, because we may be successful. And so when we're still, I think that kind of gives us the kind of the impetus, the spirit of focusing on the things that matter, because it's so easy to do a little more dishes, do a little more countertop cleaning, do a little dusting here, going for a walk, than to do the thing that matters. And I noticed that little things kind of eat up a lot of time. And tapping has helped me kind of focus, to remind me. And any kind of meditation actually does that.
Thank you, Paul. Not Paul, sorry, Frank. I always do that. Thank you. Hey, Toby.
Hi, I'm new here and I'm preparing my taxes. I know it's early, but I have to get things in order to take them to my tax preparer. And why is that relevant to what we're discussing here? Well, I hate getting my taxes together. And I have issues with starting. And I think somebody mentioned the difference between complex tasks and simpler tasks. And to me, the tax organization thing is very complex. It takes me a lot longer than I would like to admit. And I find that the hardest part for me is starting. It's not, once I get going, I'm good. And then I finish. But the starting part is really hard. And what I've discovered, which also kind of ties into what we're talking about, is that if I am very mindful about, okay, this thing goes in this pile and this other thing goes in this pile, and then we'll have a section over here for these things. It sounds stupid, but it's helpful.
Simple is great. And it's like these, and thank you so much for kind of joining us today and for contributing to your experience. And I think there's a lot of wisdom and simplicity, and being able to just recognize, like, oh, if I just be a little bit mindful about this, then it doesn't overwhelm me as much, then I can just kind of ease into it. And these are sort of the little powerful things which can have a big impact in our life. Sarah, I didn't know if you had raised your hand at some point earlier. Yeah, we'll hear from you and then from Sue.
I guess I'm unmuted. Good thing I didn't say anything. So let's see, what was I going to say? It reminded me of when I was in graduate school and I had like a big assignment to do. I would like need to clean the kitchen and do this and do that and do all these things to get ready. And then I could sit down and do it. And I wasn't the kind of person that did it at the last minute, but I needed to create some order.
Mm.
And kind of like in a little bit what Frank was saying, you know, you can do this and that. And sometimes it's an avoidance strategy, but sometimes it's sort of a getting ready to do things too. And just today, you know, I tend to be the pile queen with paperwork. I have a lot of business that's been going on. And so today I took a big pile and I took a bin with the idea that I would throw away things I don't need to try to make the pile smaller. So I made, you know, a little bit of progress. And but I love the idea of breaking tasks down into smaller things, but doing it in a mindful way, you know, not like, oh God, I've got to clear all my papers off of this desk, but say, okay, I'm going to take this pile and sit here, and I could even put a TV show on that I have taped, or watch it, have the news on, and just sort of do multitask, but, you know, kind of kill two birds with one stone. So sometimes it's okay to use distraction, but I love to be very intentional about, you know, I can look at a space and say, oh my God, this is such a mess. And then just slowly start picking things up. It's like, oh, it's not a mess anymore. It feels good, you know, to complete things. So that's all.
Yeah, thank you. And it's sort of a great reminder how like the soul traits interplay with one another, and by kind of practicing order, it's about ordering your mind. It's about creating that internal order, which kind of brings down some of these barriers and prepares you to kind of, we do a lot of that. We have contemplations in the month of Elul right before the high holidays to prepare us, and we, you know, blow the shofar every day, and we read Psalm 27 every day, none of which I say none of which I do. But nonetheless, I do sort of try to pregame a little bit before the high holidays so that I'm kind of ready to go. Sue.
So what I love about this quote, and I still love it, I'm still looking at the words, is that each part there's a descriptive, enthusiastic start, then it's sustaining energy and perseverance, you know, perseverance to move forward. So it's being enthusiastic, and then we're going to sustain ourselves, and we're going to persevere, and then we can get to a successful conclusion. So it's interesting. It's not just that we start, we sustain, you know, we move forward, but it's important how we approach it, that there's that word enthusiastic, you know. So I kind of like that. That's a good, you know, to think of, to be intentional about what we're doing. We're gonna be enthusiastic, sustain it, and then we persevere, and then we're successful. So that's very positive in the quote.
Thank you, Sue. And back to Linda and Frank.
Building on what Sarah said and what Frank said, and I hope this is relevant, but I think sometimes our motivation, our quiet inner motivation of why we're doing what we're doing may matter. For example, if you're doing a mundane task, but you're doing it for the person you live with, it may be mundane to that person, but it might be meaningful to the other person.
You know, that's a great connection. As Rabbi Ira Stone teaches, you know, Mussar is about bearing the burden of the other. And as soon as we start thinking about how we interact with other people, it's like, you know, it brings a specialness to this. And, you know, mundane task might be unloading the dishwasher, but making sure my partner can have a clean dishwasher to just start loading in dirty dishes, it's a really different thing. It's a different valence on things. Or you know, showing up for somebody for lunch with a friend, you know, it's not just driving down the street, you know, it's going to visit someone. Gary. And then Sarah.
One other thought I had was the part about perseverance. When I'm doing an art piece, I immediately get excited about it. I get an idea, I plunge in, and then perseverance part might take several days because you get to a point where either something's not right or you just need to sit on it. So you leave it. You'll do other things, maybe start another project, but then you have to come back. And usually what happens is I'll get an idea in the shower. Okay, now I can go back to it and finish it. So there's that perseverance can have a break, and then you have to get back to being
Yeah, absolutely. And it's knowing to come back to. I mean, I love starting projects. I'm one of these people, I could start all kinds of things. It's new, it's interesting, it's exciting. But then when it gets into like the maintenance phase or the completion phase, I can lose interest because there's some other new shiny object over here. And I if needed, to kind of build the skill to think about the whole thing before I get started. Or just mindfully decide I'm not going to finish this, which is okay too. We don't need to, it's okay not to finish, but it's much better to kind of be mindful about it than just kind of floating with the wind. Because then, we're I'm just thinking, we're sort of drifting into the territory of actually doing nothing. So, okay, so I'm going to change what we're going to do in the breakout groups today. And I'm going to put the prompt in the quote, and it's related to what we're in the chat. It's related to what was there before, but it's, we're talking about like doing stuff. So maybe it's like, what's one thing that you can bring mindfulness to, or you can bring stillness to help you get started, or to help you stop, or to help you complete something, or to help it be less drudgery like. So that's kind of, again, reminder with our partners, we'll be in groups of 2 or 3, we're just listening. We're not here to kind of give advice. Okay, so let me start this process of creating the breakout rooms. Okay, let's see. Okay, the rooms are open. And for those of you who've been streaming, thanks so much for being with us this week. Please feel free to drop by AmericanMussar.com to join our email list, and you can get the Zoom link and join us in person, or go by the American Mussar YouTube channel and see the full recording or the last 3 years that we've had. So thank you for being here. Hi, everyone. Welcome back. So I'm curious, how were your conversations? Would anyone like to share maybe one area of their life they're going to bring sort of stillness or mindfulness to? And we'll give first choice to people who maybe haven't participated yet, if they wish.
No one wants to participate.
And they can jump in. Yeah, Joanne.
Yeah, so actually, as we were ending our meeting, I was realizing that I like to prepare for things that are going to happen the next day, so that I'm ready for them, especially if it takes me, I oversleep or something like that happens, that I have all my paperwork organized. And my friend reminded me last week, we were going shopping for the synagogue, bring the tax exempt sheet and bring one of the bag so we can see how much stuff we can get in it and that kind of thing. But it does feel better to prepare,
Mhm.
and then it's easier to be enthusiastic. That's how I feel. And even with like something like making oatmeal, I tend to make enough for a few days so that the next day I don't have to start from scratch. And even coffee, I will drink from the same pot of coffee the second day because it's easier than starting all over again. So there's certain things that feel like drudgery, and if I can skip it, that's good.
Thank you. Vote for preparing. Totally with you there. Okay, Janet.
I'm working on a novel and my character is stuck. And the person who's writing this novel is also stuck.
Mhm.
She can't make up her mind whether to end her marriage or not to end her marriage. And I have to, as the writer, decide. And you know what? I decided that she could decide that she doesn't have to make a decision now, that she could let her patience come into play.
Mm.
She can live with this for a while, and the time will come, as you wrote in your book, when she will be able to take action, but it's not today. So I, as the writer, have got to capture indecision in a character, which is a little hard to do and keep up the interest of the reader.
Mm. Thank you, Janet. For a second, I was like, wait, is the writer trying to decide whether to end her marriage or not? But it became very
No,
clear.
not this writer.
That was
This writer already did that a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away.
gotcha. Roxanne.
In my group, I kind of talked about and I realized that I have to be kind of thoughtful and mindful about choosing when I'm going to be still and mindful because I do have ADHD. So I often have to combine like kinetic energy in order to get any kind of focus done. So I can't just force myself to focus. But my thought was if I could start with something that I know I'm going to do anyway, and that is kind of a small step. So my idea was, because I know I tend to multitask, like when I'm eating a meal, like I'll listen to a podcast or I'll watch TV or do whatever, or try to like get work done while I'm eating. And so my idea was to stop doing that, to just sit down and have a meal and not have any kind of input, any kind of entertainment or distraction or whatever.
Well, great. Well, that sounds like a really cool experiment to see what happens. Just sit and have the meal without the other inputs. Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Other comments? Insights? Anyone else? Yes,
Yeah.
Haya.
Well, I really had to look at, I've got four chapters of the Megillah to read on Purim. And I just was told, and all of a sudden, I mean, it's a yearly thing, but do you remember always the trope for Megillah? And there's all this stuff going on in my head. How am I going to do this? So I said, okay, my practice this week is going to be go in, take some breaths first, quiet my mind, and then step in and study what I have to chant for the Megillah reading for this year. And don't have to take the whole Megillah reading, those 4 chapters. I have more than 4 days. So I have a week and 4 days almost. So how about just taking one chapter at a time until you get that down and then so it's more that stillness of being focused rather than getting all riled and afraid and concerned.
Sounds like a great plan. Then we have the planning, the focus, the stillness, breaking it down. So we have Sarah and then Karen and then Linda.
I was just going to say something about, where's that author? About the book. Janet. So that reminded me of, it's kind of a tangent, but it reminded me of sometimes with decision making. Sometimes when you have to make a big decision, you don't have the answer right away, and you have to pause and you have to be still and you have to wait. Like, why am I talking? But no, but being still, I mean, it's kind of respecting, you know, your own process. For me, for decision making, as an example.
Mm.
And that has to do with, you know, allowing myself to be still and say, okay, I'm not ready to make, you know, I'm not ready to make the decision yet. And it makes me, it reminds me of something in 12-step recovery, you know, about forcing solutions. I don't have to force a solution. I don't have to force making a decision if I'm not ready. It's better to pause and wait, you know, because life is a process. And I mean, I think that it's better to be mindful about decision making. And then just one other thing about one of the quotes earlier that we were talking about, and that was about, I can't remember because it's not, I don't have it up, but it's about starting a task and being enthusiastic, et cetera, et cetera. The same thing, like if you're doing it with a group, to be still in the group, it's kind of like what Bonnie was saying, you know, sometimes, you know, she has to stop herself from taking over, but it's funny, you know, because I've been part, you know, I've led groups and been in groups. And I think that if you wait, and if they're like, you know, kind of like you're doing, Greg, you know, if you're a good facilitator, you might say, well, let's see if somebody that hasn't shared wants to share. So it's the same thing, like if you're working on a big project with people, some people might have wonderful things to share, but if other people are dominating, then they don't get a chance to show their style and participate. So I think that stillness is important, the application of stillness to a lot of different things. That's all.
Yeah, thank you. And where I thought you were going and what it reminded me of, in addition to like, what does, if we are just by ourselves and we go into pause and stillness, what does the universe have to share? What does the divine have to share? What does another part of me have to share? Because I think sometimes there's loud parts of our brain too. It's like always like, this is the first idea. And if we just run with that idea, we may miss a different idea from a different part of the brain. So thank you, Sarah. Karen, I saw your hand was up before. Did you want to share?
Okay, I joined late, so I was a little confused as to where you were going with this. And I wondered when you put in the chat, if stillness and mindfulness were ways to get started. Because enthusiasm was the first of the 3 parts for a project. And if mindfulness and stillness were 2 ways of getting space and being able to infuse the enthusiasm so we can get started, I wanted to share one of the things that I use, which is the question why. And that often for me, why does this matter to me? Why is this important? Why am I doing this? Is very much like turning the key in the ignition. And it won't get me all the way through to the end. But I use that analogy. And so if it fits in at all, I wanted to share that.
It does, absolutely. And I could imagine, for me, it might also help, you know, in the middle as well. It's like, all right, I'm running out of steam. I'm pooping out. Well, why did I start this again? Oh, yeah, there's a really good reason, you know. And one of the quotes we didn't look at about finishing is, you know, a mitzvah is only ascribed on its completion. So, you know, doing half of something sometimes doesn't accomplish anything. You know, it's not till we finish that that we kind of get there. So Linda, you'd had your hand up as well. No, you're good. Okay. Marjorie, so you will have the last comment tonight.
That weird, okay, why am I like weird screen here? Oh, okay. The one thing that comes into my head is overthinking things. For me, that is a way to kind of avoid, like for me to just start, start something, it's going to bring, and when I get started, it brings me joy. And that's really important. And even if it's not, like whoopee kind of joy, it's like, especially when it's involving another person, we bring each other, I've contributed to what I call tikkun olam in the world, which is repairing the world. And even if it's just a one-on-one, yeah, that person receives joy. And I just find that that's a great way for me to experience enthusiasm. And, but for me, a big aspect of it is just don't overthink it, start something. Doesn't work out. I think it's been mentioned before, you'll go away, you can come back. But typically if I complete something, it's like, oh, again, more joy, oh, it was great. Look at how this worked out. Or this didn't work out. We'll try another method. It's all a big experiment for me. So that is all.
Thank you.
And I survived the blizzard, just FYI, if anybody.
Good.
Yeah, okay, I'm lowering my hand.
Can I just ask where are you from, Marjorie?
I'm in Minnesota.
So am I.
Oh, okay. So we're
Okay.
here, we're the frozen chosen. Okay.
Well, I'm glad you both survived the blizzard and lived to come tell the tale here in the group. So let's close with some stillness. Just relax and close your eyes. And take in a nice leisurely breath. When you're ready, a nice leisurely exhale. And as you exhale, just imagine the energy is draining out of your body. Any tension, it's like letting the tub empty. That tension passes down through your arms and torso. Goes down through the waist. Drops down through our legs and past our knees. Feel that tension draining away through the calves and past the ankles and out the bottom of our feet. And we sit in stillness. When you're ready, you may open your eyes.